concerned about personally, because I know how hard you folks work, is sustainability. Okay, so that the business model, and that when you said, you know, it's free, I'm going, no. There has to be the business model to make it sustainable. And I think back on in 2008 was when the first apps contest, it was called Apps for Democracy, it was held in Washington, D.C. And the top 3 applications that won, I think it was $50,000 or something in total, none of them exist now. Okay, not that they weren't good applications, but they didn't have the business model to sustain them. The people that create applications also have to put food on the table. So I think it's really, really important that we not lose sight of that.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Rocket Man takes a lot of my time, and have very limited time because I run a startup on the side and I do consulting a day. But I'm just doing it because it worked, and there's a lot of people using it now. So it's a shame to pull the the plug on it. But again, having a unified protocol is very important, because now we can transfer that code to other municipalities with slight effort. And I don't know what other municipalities are thinking. And this is, I mean, Mississauga recently launched a transit app, but they're charging $2 for it, and the data is not open. So yes, there are great people working in Toronto, City of Toronto, and releasing that data, but at the same time, I don't know what's going on in other local governments and what's their...
Actually, in Hamilton on Friday, and I got a terse email from a senior staffer for saying this, and I'll say it because it is true. Our transit agency, once again, has been told that their website sucks. And they're going to work to build another new app. I don't even know how many apps it's been so far that have sucked. And I got up at committee and I said, and this is true, we have a new transit terminal that's about 1.5 years old, and they still haven't figured out how to make the digital clocks in it work. And so I actually pointed out the window, I said, they can't even get the digital clocks to work. How are they going to build an app? But it's this obsession with, well, and I think what it comes down to is the same problem in Ottawa, where they say that service is on time. And I've tweeted before as a journalist, I've called highways closed. The route is closed. And I've called this transit agency, and they'll give me the statement, all buses are on time, no problems. And so I often say that the buses are in magic flying carpet mode. But it comes down to somehow we've got to get the bureaucrats past the point of, I make no mistakes. I'm perfect. Everything's good. Our website that doesn't meet any standards is amazing. The people just don't understand.
Well, to what degree does their job depend on that, being stubborn at that point? To what degree are we really trying to tell them, you should open this information up to us because we can just do it better? And if we can do it better, which we can, then, and this is just the inevitable evolution of things. Talk about small government. It really is just going to come down to the bureaucracy being replaced by startups.
See, my young friend, I have to... I just
the
have
end
to
of bureaucracy.
Intercede here that and even when governments get together talking about the issues, they all nail down one thing. Numero uno problem is their culture. Okay? And so, and you spoke to that just now. The point is that you can understand, irrespective of whether it's public, private, or non-profit, where there's a history, where there's a culture in the way that people operate, that takes time to change. And, as I noted, that you really need the leaders. If you don't have the leaders, I'm telling you, things will not change. One of the few things that actually creates change, Joey's a perfect example of this, is that if you start beating the bushes and you start writing, blogging, tweeting, what have you, and if the community builds up enough kind of momentum, if you will, or enough presence that the politicians say, okay, this is something I need to pay attention to, even then, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight. It means that it might start.
We're going to have a meeting about
the amount of time. We need to meet about that. Let's talk, right?
I think the other thing that, like, really to build off of what you're saying is creating change where we start to think of the data that we're looking for as a public good, as something that as taxpayers we help create, but with the government collecting it. But more importantly, as part of our commons, part of like how we live together and how we share. And I think when you start looking at what we do as a good, like as an actual tangible thing, then you get to really see a change. And I think pointing to citizen budget for an example, it's creating consultation where it's not about saving face. It's not about like, oh, we have to consult the citizens now, but rather actually educating citizens and getting input from them on a real number, on not just do you like the library, yes or no, but do you want $10,000 more of books or $12,000 more books? And I think that like we really need to focus not on efficiency of the same processes, but just efficiency of, and like what is going to be collaborative, communicative, and not just replicate the same things in Web 2.0 because we have these fancy tools, but actually start doing things differently.
So do you think there's a way that we can lobby, that we can move past this cynicism of path dependency and tradition and the way government's always been is going to prevent us from moving forward? And can we, as a community, come together and lobby the people that we need to lobby to start understanding that their job is to create benefit and value for society versus just looking at whether their job depends on it?
Can I interject?
Yeah.
And just respond. I think that one thing Canadians really take for granted is how far behind we are in the internet, just in general.
Yes.
So much of our country isn't connected. We're so far behind on broadband, and like, I think one of the great things for our community is, like, I agree with you, we obviously need to make them see that we exist here, but the rest of the world is kind of going to do that work for us. The UK is so far ahead of us. Korea is so far ahead of us in creating apps and engagement.
We're the biggest Facebook users.
So, and that's the thing is, like, we are the biggest Facebook users, and there's some stat where, like, 90% of people under the age of 24 have a Facebook account or something
96.
like that. Like, it's something ridiculous.
96.
Where, like, that connect, like, it's not like Canadians aren't talking to each other. It's just, like, we're not. So what I'm saying is that I think people like Tony Clement aren't going to respond to citizens in Canada saying, hey, what's going on here? But they're going to respond to the pressure that's going to be put on Canada in the next 5 years to develop e-commerce and web apps and the whole 9 yards from
the great example is the fact that Canada Post is after the open data community for, heaven forbid, collecting postal codes, which, I don't even know how many times I've sat and gone, Google could not exist in Canada. Facebook could not exist in Canada. There's just so many companies that are web that could not exist legally in Canada because of our laws. In terms of getting involved, the hackerspace movements have really got into open data, open government, connecting each other, building virtual private networks to try to increase efficiency of communication. So you guys have here in Toronto downtown a group called HackLab, hacklab.to. Look them up. They're a great group of people. If you want to start getting involved, learning more, it's not just open data, it's open hardware. 3D printing is just amazing. I'm printing tonight a charger bay I'm building my own charger for my BlackBerry battery that overall cost me like $8 to build, and all of that's open source. So, because I know that we're getting near the end, I want to get that pitch in for the movement. So.
Yeah, I do just want to open it up to anybody who has any questions. If anybody would like to ask any of our esteemed panelists anything, I welcome you to.
Maybe a comment.
Go ahead.
You're talking about opening up and opening access to the data. God forbid our government is deleting the data that we collected so hard to learn for the gun registry data. It has been deleted by the government, so good luck.
Well, Quebec's trying to keep a copy of it.
They went to the court and protect.
Yeah.
No, they only the portion of Quebec portion.
Quebec's portion, yes.
I mean, who wonder why I'm good? That's
Well, without getting into the philosophy of the gun registry itself, I do want to get into the idea of personal privacy. in that the gun registry data does have a lot of personal information. So if we separate it from the gun issue, and let's look at it as a database of personal information, I do want my government to delete my personal information after a set amount of time, in general. Now, again, remember that I'm separating this from the gun registry itself and talking philosophically. There is data that should not be open. There is data that, even keeping it digitally, I would be hesitant to. So, for example, I have a thick personnel file in the National Archives from my time in the military service. And I can't remember the amount of time after my death where it becomes available. And that's a nice public document that's on paper. I'd be very nervous if all that information was digital and vulnerable to access. So if they had a digital copy, which they actually do have some digital information, all of that is now gone because I've been out for a set amount of time. So one of the things to remember about open data as well is that we still want barriers for privacy. I'm not interested in where flu happens exactly, for example, but I'm interested in the neighborhoods and the prevalence of certain illness in neighborhoods. But I don't want that down to the street level. And in the event that that data becomes identifiable of a small group, I do not want that released. So I wanted to get that in, that there is some data that does need to be deleted and some data that should never be open.
Well, one thing about open data, I think it's interesting to realize it's an ongoing process. For example, the TTC, I remember seeing over the years a few people present the open data from the TTC and some of the problems that were going on.
And on behalf of the TTC or open data,
for example, do you sense
from experience that what I saw, I'll give you an example. Like schedules and routes change due to construction, or the 501 changes from one location to another. And even with that, I don't see the change is instant. It would take sometimes up to a week to have the data replicated through the... Four?
The 504 streetcar and
yes.
the triangle around River Street.
Yes.
They had it on diversion for 1 week.
Okay.
It's now been 5 weeks and it's still not working.
So
yeah, then that affects your applications as well as others.
Yeah, so what happened is I have a small software that monitors that data, and then whenever there's a change, I push it to the app over the air when you launch the app, and that way make sure everything's up to date. But again, the TTC is not doing that themselves, right? It's Next Bus Service and the contractor that's responsible for this. So again, it's a could be a lot of, maybe someone else who would know more details.
I with the TTC, I found it fascinating. So as somebody who used to come to Toronto a lot when I was working for national media outlets, I remember the bus drive, the sleeping token booth guy moment, and I remember in the newsroom, everybody in the newsroom, every journalist, yeah, let's go after the TTC. Nobody liked the TTC. Not one voice went up and said, there might be a reason for this. And all of a sudden, the TTC, I think government did not realize just how the level of disdain that citizens held for the service. And I just remember they pile on every little incident that the media we could get our hands on. We were like, yeah, it proves this. Yeah, that token guy that grunts at me every morning. And I remember actually, I was